So I don't know which is worse, all the MAGA gloating or all the complaining about the MAGA gloating. They're both horrible. They both take up an extraordinary amount of my time, leaving me almost no time to prepare for the show. But I did find the time. I am prepared. We have two great guests, and we have you. Stay tuned for another edition of Two Way tonight. Roll the big new open. What? There is no big new produced open? Too bad. All right. Thank you for joining. We'll have to just wing it. I'm Mark Halperin. The highly produced new two-way tonight open is not ready yet, apparently. So I'll push forward and say, welcome to the show. You know the rules. Peace, love, and understanding, blah, blah, blah. Presumption of grace, blah, blah, blah. Raise your hand if you're on this platform, blah, blah, blah. If you're on X or YouTube, blah, blah, blah. Don't put smack in the chat. Steve Elmendorf is here. Hogan Gidley will be here. He's always a little late. He runs on Southern time. But in the meantime, I'll tell you what's going on. And then if you're here on the two-way platform, I would love your questions, particularly if you've never asked one. Raise your yellow electronic hand if you'd like to get in on the conversation. And before too long, we will begin to call on you. And we welcome your thoughts, your views, your questions, anything you'd like. And again, rare opportunity to ask Steve Elmendorf and Hogan Gidley questions. You won't want to miss it. Today, dominated once again by Ukraine, of course, on this third anniversary of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. There, I'm not afraid to say it. Putin invaded Russia. Shouldn't have done it. President Macron of France was at the White House today, and he and President Trump spoke on two occasions to the media and the world audience, once at a White House Oval Office photo op, and then later at a relatively abbreviated press conference. We'll bring you highlights from that. The debate continues in Europe, in the United States, in New York, also at the UN. The United States continues to face criticism from folks around the world and from Senator Mitch McConnell over the seemingly rhetorical only, so far, tilt towards Putin and towards Russia. Meanwhile, the Russians and the Chinese had a big confab today, and the Chinese were all affectionate towards Putin, further confusing matters. Subplot, Elon Musk, once again, another day dominated by the question of whether the government would like its workers to answer Musk's 5 things you did last week survey. That little mixed messages on that. We'll talk about that a little bit. Federal judge today refused to reinstate the AP's White House privileges in terms of coverage, although the French media, amongst whom there was an AP reporter, had their AP reporter ask a question at the first question on the French side at the press conference, kind of outfoxing the White House just a bit. Roberta Flack died. Lester Holt announced he was no longer going to anchor, and Joy Reid officially got her pink slip. We will talk about it all today on a very special Monday edition. Nah, it's not that special. Is Hogan here yet? Hogan here?
No, I've texted
No,
him.
no Hogan. All right. Steve, stand by. Let's show some videos. And then when Hogan gets here, we'll bring Hogan and Steve in. All right. Probably the most iconic video of the day occurred in the Oval Office. This is going to be number one, Sam. This is an incredible moment. Again, Donald Trump loves taking questions, so he took questions, maybe took more questions in the Oval during the photo op, sitting side by side with Macron, than he did at the press conference. But this is a moment where there's a question about paying Ukraine paying back money that came from the West, from Europe, and from the United States. And Donald Trump makes a point about the Europeans getting paid back, and seemed to be saying the U.S. was not going to be paid back, but the Europeans were. And what you need to watch here is Macron touches the president. It's a very natural move amongst mon amis, but maybe not amongst world leaders, where one of the world leaders is the germ-phobic Donald Trump. So watch this. Watch this. It's relatively short, but watch when Macron reaches out and touches the presidential arm. Roll number one, please.
Again, just so you understand, Europe is loaning the money to Ukraine. They get their money back.
No, in fact, to be frank, we paid 60% of the total default, and it was through, like the US, loans, guarantee, grants, and we provided real money. To be clear, we have 230 billion.
So Macron right now is on Fox doing an exclusive interview with Brett Baer. which I did not know about. I probably should have. We'll monitor that. Anyway, um, there was a lot of friendliness between them, and I thought when I saw Macron's hand reaching out to touch President Trump, I thought Donald Trump was going to like deck him or react in some negative way. But in fact, it seemed to be fine with it, which is quite something. Uh, um, Meanwhile, they're voting right now in the House Rules Committee, and they've lost Massey. So if they get this out of the Rules Committee, they can't lose anybody else. We'll keep monitoring that as well. That's on the reconciliation piece package of one big beautiful bill. All right. So during the press conference, President Trump stayed pretty much on the message he's been on, seemingly speaking favorably, more favorably about Putin than about Zelensky. And here he is, number two, talking about his confidence that he can end the war.
That's what I do. I do deals. My whole life is deals. That's all I know is deals. And I know when somebody wants to make it and when somebody doesn't. I will say this, before I came here, there was no communication with Russia whatsoever, and Russia wasn't answering calls. They were not talking to anybody. They wouldn't talk to anybody, and people sort of accepted that as being that they want to go forward and just keep going without stop. But when I got here, one of the first calls I made was to President Putin, and we were treated with great respect, and they want to end this war. So that's a big thing, because I didn't know if I could say that, but it's a big thing. They want to do it, and the group in the front row that I introduced, they're all very active in it, and we're working on deals right now, transactions right now, and in particular, the big one is to get the war stopped, whether it's ceasefire or direct to an agreement. I'd like to go directly to an agreement, but ceasefire will always happen a little bit quicker. And every day you're saving thousands, or at least hundreds, but thousands in some cases, lives. So we want to see if we can get that done.
The president also said that he expects to meet with Zelensky relatively soon, maybe as soon as next week. So this could be on something of a fast track. Let's play number 4, please.
We'll be meeting with President Zelensky. In fact, he may come in this week or next week to sign the agreement, and which would be nice. I'd love to meet him. Would meet at the Oval Office. So the agreement's being worked on now. They're very close to a final deal. It'll be a deal with rare earths and various other things, and he would like to come, as I understand it, here to sign it, and that would be great with me. I think they then have to get it approved by their council or whoever might approve it, but I'm sure that will happen.
So remember, the best way to think like Trump, the best way to kind of understand his orientation towards gaming out the future and what he's looking for is to imagine that you and Donald Trump are making a movie about the life of Donald Trump. And you're looking for big tentpole scenes, and you'll want Donald Trump to be the star of those tentpole scenes. So you're looking for big scenes where Donald Trump can walk in and there's lots of cameras and everybody's hanging on his every word. So I suspect as he's thinking about trying to end the war, he's thinking about a big set piece with Putin, a big set piece with Zelensky, maybe one with both of them. Maybe one where he's treated like a conquering hero with a parade on the Champs-Elysees. I don't know. But he thinks about these meetings not just as steps along the way to negotiating a deal, but also, again, as big cinematic moments where he can be at the center of attention. So, in at the UN today, in some of the rhetoric still coming out of the administration, you continue to hear. You don't need an expert ear. You continue to hear a tilt towards Russia, a tilt towards Putin, a praising of Putin for wanting a deal, and a pressuring of Zelensky to make a deal. And it is striking a lot of people in the foreign policy establishment in Europe, and even some Republicans who are pretty MAGA in their orientation. It's striking them as at best weird and also counterproductive. I continue to say, never has the phrase "the proof is in the pudding" been more applicable. It will depend on the deal. If this leads to a deal on Putin's terms, where he gets lots of territory and no constraints, all the sanctions come off, and he gets to go back into the G whatever, and then he goes into Europe and takes more territory in Ukraine or elsewhere, that'd be a bad deal. State the obvious. But if this is a deal that allows further integration of Ukraine into the West, that does not give Putin the ability to re-engage on a basis that gives him a big advantage, um, it's something different. So I'm still in wait and see mode. I understand why people are bothered by the rhetoric. I find it jarring, and I've said before, since the first campaign, Donald Trump's rhetorical tilt towards Putin, people have provided 75 explanations for it, from from blackmail to wanting to do business to being an agent, all these things. I don't know what it is. All I know is it's continuing here, and I understand people's concern about it. All right, let's bring in our guests, ladies and gentlemen, representing himself and only himself, the one and only Hogan Gidley. He's got to turn his video on while we wait for Hogan. Oh, there he is. Okay, there's Hogan. Add in Hogan Gidley. Hogan, welcome. Thank you for joining. Where are you tonight, Hogan? Oh, you're muted. Unmute. Unmute. There you go. Where are you, Hogan?
I'm working tonight.
You're working.
At an undisclosed location.
Undisclosed location. All right. Well, we're very glad to take a little break. Oops. Brought in Steve, brought him back out. Here's Steve Almendorf, who's wearing his signature vest.
Hogan's wearing a tie. I'm very impressed. He's a
Yeah,
Republican,
that's right.
but
Yeah. All right, gentlemen, here's my idea. I want to warm you up a little bit by talking about some B topics, but they're important topics, but we'll warm you up and then we'll get back to Ukraine and Musk and whether what's her name? Heather Cox Richardson. Is that her name? Is that her name? Heather Richardson? Is that her name? Yeah.
I don't even know, I don't know you're talking about.
What's her name?
Heather Cox Richardson.
Heather Cox Richardson. Yeah, whether she's right or not. She's a liberal, and you don't know her. Steve, reflections on the death of Roberta Flack. Anything on that?
You really are. You're going way off topic here, Mark.
I just want to warm you up. You got anything to say about Roberta Flack? Either one of you? No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Hogan, how about let's call it what it is, the firing of Joy Reid? What's the cultural, political, media significance of that?
Well, obviously, I think a lot of people online are roasting her and her tearful goodbye that she posted. You and I both know Joy. We used to frequent her show and be on panels with her in years past.
No. Have you ever been on TV with Joy Reid? I know you're mostly kidding. Have you?
No. Yeah. Back during 12, I mean, MSNBC was the only network that would allow a Santorum person on. So I
was never on TV with Joy Reid, as far as I know.
Okay. Well, I used to be on there a lot. But obviously the turn to her being kind of the cultural lightning rod that she became, I don't know what they're going to do at MSNBC. I mean, they just fired like 5 hours worth of programming. So yeah. I don't know how they're going to fill the.
Well, they're giving the three weekend hosts, including your friend Michael Steele, two hours a day on the weekdays, I think. So that's 10 hours right there. Okay. Steve, is it a loss for the Democratic Party to see Joy Reid give up that slot?
I don't believe cable TV is the home of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I think it's a money-making enterprise, and all the cable networks make decisions based on how they can make the most money, not on support of one party or the other. So I think as a party, we need to be on all channels, and whoever they have hosting, we should be participating both on Fox and MSNBC and CNN and shows like this, and lots of new and different ways.
Who's your favorite Fox News host, Steve?
My favorite Fox News host. I don't watch a lot of Fox TV, Mark.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't watch a lot of cable TV, to be honest, Mark.
Yeah.
I'd rather read books and read articles, and so I can't say I've watched Fox in the last couple weeks.
But just in the abstract, do you like my friend Dana Perino? Do you like her?
Yeah, I like her a lot.
Yeah. All right. Hogan, who's your favorite MSNBC anchor or host?
Well, the best name in news, without a doubt, is Ali Vitale. That's number one. Best name in news, period.
Yeah. Does it rhyme?
I don't know what it is. The pentameter.
It's sing-songy.
It's sing-songy, yes.
Yeah.
On MS, Hallie, maybe.
Yeah, is she on MS still? I think
Is
she
she
lost.
on, or is she on NBC now?
I think they moved her to Peacock or
No, did they?
NBC News Now or something. Got a lot of
No.
channels over there. All
Yes.
right, let's get right to it. Steve, where are you on the scale of 0 is Donald Trump is still king of the universe, and 10 is get ready for Speaker Jeffries and Majority Leader Schumer. Where are you on the Carville scale?
I think we're making progress. Maybe we've gone from a 0 a couple weeks ago, maybe when I was last on here, to
Yeah.
a 3.
Okay.
And I think there's a long way to the next election, and we're making progress. And I think we're making progress. You want my 3? I like to do
I
3
do.
things.
I do. I'm always about the threes. Tell me the 3 areas of progress you see, sir.
One, I think that prices are not coming down, and if you look at a lot of the recent polling, people notice that, and they're concerned about Donald Trump's stewardship of the economy because they elected him, and he said on day one that prices were going to come down, and they're not coming down yet. That's one. Two, I think the more we talk about the $880 billion that Republicans are going to cut out of Medicaid, I think the more progress we will make, because there is not enough waste and abuse to get $880 billion out of Medicaid. What you're going to be doing is taking real benefits away from a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump. 3, I think the Elon/Doge effort is headed in the wrong direction. I think people look at this guy standing on the stage with his chainsaw and his sunglasses, and this is not what they voted for. They did not vote. They voted for a better government and a more efficient government. They did not vote for a chainsaw, indiscriminate cutting of things in the government, whether it be agriculture or veterans or the FAA or healthcare that they want. And indiscriminate cuts are not what they want. They want more efficiency, and they want it done better. So I think the combination of prices not coming down, the Medicaid cuts, which they're going to vote for soon, and the Elon/Doge weirdness is beginning to take a toll on Donald Trump's numbers.
All right, before we let Hogan in on all 3, and I want to hear him on all 3, do voters really expect prices? I know President Trump suggested he'd do it,
all I know is what Donald Trump said. He said he was going to solve.
Do you think?
He said he was going to solve inflation on day one, along with ending the war in Ukraine on day one, by the way, to move ahead. Day one.
Day one.
Not day 25, not day 35.
Do you think voters really expect prices to be down already? I'm asking seriously. I don't know.
I think they expect he said he was going to fix the economy and prices were going to come down, and they're not down. In some cases, they're up.
All right, Hogan, let's take them one by one in reverse order. What do you think of Elon and the chainsaw and the sunglasses and kind of the off-track imagery in Steve's mind?
Yeah, people are excited about these cuts because they know there have been long, documented instances of fraud, waste, and abuse in the federal government. These cuts haven't been made. What they've been done in a lot of places is just kind of highlighted. Congress is going to codify some of them, as I understand it, but also some of these recommendations are clearly egregious, mishandling and misspending of the American tax dollar. And for the life of me, and maybe Steve can answer this, I don't know when, why, or how Democrats got on the side of protecting fraud, waste, and abuse. It blows my mind politically. But also, if you notice, remember when there are all those glitches in social media, and they're like, we're not censoring or silencing or shadow banning conservatives, but every time there was a quote unquote glitch, it always cut against conservative voices on social media. The same thing applies in this realm. Has there been a single dollar that's been uncovered that's gone to like a cause that conservatives like? I don't think so. They're all being spent into some type of progressive slush fund to, grow Democrat ideology, woke ideology.
Hold on one second. So I know Steve would admit or acknowledge, I should say, that people are against waste, fraud, and abuse. Steve, be more specific so Hogan can respond on point, because Hogan is ostensibly an expert on images and brands and public communication. What is Musk doing that you think people don't like?
I don't think they like, laying off people at national parks. I think when they come, when they
Hold
show
on,
up
hold
at the
on, hold on,
national
hold on,
park, when they show
hold
up
on.
at the national park with their family and they can't
Okay.
get in, they're not
Okay,
going
hold
to.
on. Hogan, do you agree with that? People don't like you. You don't agree?
No. All you
That's
need is a
not
key.
woke. That's not woke stuff. Having a
It's
guide
not.
and
No, it's not woke. It's not woke. It's wasteful. I mean, how
I
many
don't think
things are
so.
how many things are automated now? Run your card through any parking garage in DC. There's not a guy there. You just run your card through, and the arm opens, and when you leave, it closes.
Have you ever been
Big
to a
deal.
national park? Have you ever been to Yosemite or Yellowstone
Many
or
times.
Glacier?
Many times. I'm not saying all these things are going to save us countless dollars. What I am saying is, let's not pretend as though there aren't plenty of pockets of misspending taxpayer dollars
even
in this country.
national parks. All right, Steve, Hogan pushed back on national parks. What else is Musk doing that you say is unpopular? Not the popular parts. What's unpopular?
I think laying off multiple people at the Centers for Disease Control or HHS when we have a bird flu epidemic potentially, when we have a measles epidemic in Texas, that we haven't had a measles epidemic in how many years? I think those are problematic.
Okay, Hogan, are you concerned about that?
I'm not right now, but again, it depends on how this all gets fleshed out in the future. What we're looking for here is Elon Musk to kind of take that sledgehammer to this whole process, and he's done that, or the chainsaw, whatever the proverbial mechanism you want to use. But the fact is, what does it do to real people's lives? If it doesn't impact them at all, except create a more efficient government, I don't think many people are going to care that you find some places where we can make some cuts. I just don't.
All right, let's move on to Steve's second one, and again in reverse order. But it's weird. If you do three things, you do reverse order, two is still two. Hogan, Medicaid, very sacred program for many governors, for many health providers, many families, including in red America.
Sure.
So are significant restraints of spending in Medicaid politically palatable, popular?
Again, it depends on what they find and how they sell it. If it's fraud, waste, and abuse, yeah, I think it's going to be popular. If you're cutting people's health care, that's not going to be popular. And Donald Trump ran on not touching Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare. So if that's the case and no one touches that, then I think we're going to be fine. If you try to touch that third rail, as we all know, it's only a matter of time before you have the Paul Ryan, Democrat-led commercials of him pushing Granny off the cliff in a wheelchair.
Steve, one of the most shameful things your party has done during my career is demagogue on the entitlement programs. Makes me sick to my stomach.
Has Donald Trump demagogued on the entitlement programs?
No,
how many years, Mark?
No, he's not. I don't think he's demagogued on it. He's put his head in the sand and refused to acknowledge that they need to be reformed. I don't know that he's demagogued.
Mark, do you remember? You're old enough to remember the last time we balanced the budget. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, when Bill Clinton was president.
Yeah,
after we grew the economy, and Al Gore had reinventing government and did it smartly.
And raising taxes on the wealthy so they pay their fair share.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's different than your party looking to falsely accuse the other party of cutting health care. Now, maybe they will, but
Trump tried to get rid of the Affordable Care Act in his last term.
He did.
That was cutting health care.
He did. Yeah. But that's not demagoguery. That was just foolish error. All right, last one, Hogan. Last one is Steve's first one. Do you remember what it was, Hogan?
No, I'm so far afield at this point. I'm still back on the sweat of the vest from before, having PTSD from Rick Santorum and sweater vests.
All right, Steve, tell them what your first one was.
The prices are not coming down.
Yeah.
They were supposed to come down on day one. Day one.
Hogan, what have you bought today to eat? What have you bought today?
Oh, I eat every 2 hours, Mark.
I know. What'd you buy?
I've had a
lot of protein shakes.
I didn't buy it. I meal prep.
All right, let me ask it this way: what's something you've bought lately that you were struck by how expensive it was for food? I mean,
I think everything's a lot more. My grocery bill's $350 a week, depending on the week. It's
just for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Now I'm in DC.
Yeah,
and I'm not buying name brand stuff. It's just expensive.
So I keep telling people when they tell me about high prices and falling poll numbers, there is no election right now. So
Yes.
So you know the president, you know the people around him. Are they concerned about lowering prices anytime soon?
No, I mean, they're concerned about lowering prices and they want to do it quickly. No question about it. A lot of this obviously will have something to do with the budget coming out of the House as well. It is indisputable that one of the largest, if not the number one issue in the last campaign was the economy. Clearly, Joe Biden ran us into a ditch. Donald Trump says he wants to fix that. I have supreme confidence he will do that because he's done it before. But are people anxious? Do they want to pay less for gas and for groceries? Sure. But I do appreciate the fact Democrats have found Jesus on this topic, because we were told for so long that, of course, all this inflation and everything was transitory, and then it was caused by Putin, then it was a supply chain problem, and then it really is there, but it's actually good for you. So I'm glad that they care a lot about high prices. But let me just say, on the House floor, the day that Speaker Johnson was reelected, Hakeem Jeffries got up and talked about how people are being gutted by these high prices. Things cost too much, doing, simple things, gas and groceries, all the things he talked about. And I was like, is that not the best self-own ever? Because Trump wasn't sworn in yet. He's just finally recognizing and saying, now that the election's over, that, yeah, people are paying too much for these things, was kind of ridiculous to me, but whatever. I think Donald Trump's going to fix it.
Okay. He's going to fix it with 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada. He said at his press thing today, next week.
Yeah.
He's going to fix.
Just keeps throwing them out there.
I'm sorry.
They're bloody shirt, those tariff threats. Yeah. Please raise your hand if you want to get into this conversation. Hogan.
Yes.
Why does the president keep saying nice things about Putin and mean things about Zelensky?
He wants this deal to be over with. He wants to prevent the loss of life. He said that for a long time. And let's not forget, when Donald Trump was president the first time, it was the mainstream media and the Democrats who called this guy a clown, a comedian, running a communist country. He was corrupt. Now all of a sudden he's Churchill. Let's relax. So Donald Trump's trying to get to an end to this war, which is something Joe Biden did not do and could not do.
Okay, but why
I bet
it
ends pretty quickly.
I'm not asking this in a hostile way. I'm super curious.
No,
why is it in the service of getting a deal to say nice things about Putin and mean things about Zelensky? Why does that make a good deal more likely?
Well, I think Donald Trump understands how to make deals, which the last administration did not, clearly. And so whatever methods he thinks work best, I think I'm going to kind of leave it to the guy who has made a career and billions of dollars making deals.
All right, Steve, is that a reasonable position, that Trump knows what he's doing and therefore we should just trust that he's doing this with purpose?
No. Deals are fine if they're good deals. A bad deal is not good. Look, as you said, the proof's in the pudding, Mark. We'll have to see what the deal is. I do think, though, you have to acknowledge that Vladimir Putin is a corrupt dictator who invaded a sovereign country. And if we don't draw the line on invasions by dictators of sovereign countries, what are we going to say when President Xi decides to invade Taiwan? What are we going to say when the dictator of North Korea decides to invade South Korea? Where do we stop if we let all the dictators in the world take over whatever they want? We fought a World War I, World War II on this issue. I don't think we should let Vladimir Putin march into Ukraine or anywhere else without consequences and without pushing back to where the pre-war lines in Ukraine.
Pre-war lines?
Are
you serious?
That's what I think.
How about including Crimea?
That wasn't what this war was about, was Crimea. Look.
Well, but why are you drawing the line at this particular incursion?
I don't think we should allow Vladimir Putin to invade wherever he wants in Europe. I think we have a vested interest in the health of Europe and the economic. They're important, both economic and strategic partner of ours. They helped us in a lot of cases when we needed help, as did Canada. And I just don't think, I think we believe in alliances in the world. And I don't think we should let Vladimir Putin, who is a corrupt dictator, called such by Ronald Reagan and Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis and lots of other Republicans over not as recently as this week.
You don't mean Ronald Reagan?
Not this week, but I'm saying I heard Tom Tillis on the floor this week.
Yeah. Steve, let me ask you this question. If we could replace every American member of the military, active duty, who's stationed in Europe today with a European, would you be for that?
I don't think that's a realistic.
But is that
I
that
think
what we should aspire
I think
to?
we have a vested interest in the security of Europe. If you're saying we have no interest, if we should get out of NATO and we have no interest
No,
in Europe, no, I
I'm just
disagree.
asking if you think we should
I
continue.
disagree.
So would you like the same number of Americans in Europe as
I
there
don't
are
know what
today?
the number should be, Mark, but we have a vested interest in the
I
security of
agree we
Europe,
do. I
and
agree.
they have an interest in our security. And
Hogan, would you like to see American forces out of Europe?
No, I mean, look, look, first, let me just say this because I think it's important. Foreign affairs are very tricky. They're very layered, they're very serious, and they're very sensitive. So blanket statements about things one way or the other is really what's gotten us into a lot of trouble, I think, in the past. Understanding nuance here, I think, is pretty key to these negotiations. But at the same time, whatever is in our interest, I think we should absolutely cultivate. I think we should build out. And how that looks and how it manifests depends on the situation. But getting out of Europe or not having partners or allies around the world is not even on the table. Donald Trump, built partnerships and allegiances with all types of folks around the world. I mean, there weren't any wars under his watch. Russia did not invade anywhere for the first time in several administrations. Not to mention, it was Joe Biden who said a minor incursion's okay. And now here's where we are with Russia. So a lot of problems there that I think Donald Trump can fix, but he's going to have to take some time to get it done. I think it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
All right, community questions, just a moment. Quick, rapid round. Steve, is Vice President Vance doing a good job?
no.
No. Hogan, is John Fetterman doing a good job?
Ish.
Okay. Steve, which member of the Trump administration is doing the best job and why?
That's a hard one, Mark. I'm trying to think who's doing a good job. There's nothing he's done so far that, again, as I said, when I've been on here previously, I admire his political skills and their political skills, but substantively, there's nothing they have done that I would agree with.
Okay. But you don't think if anybody's doing a good job?
I think the jury's out on like the Secretary of the Treasury or Secretary of Commerce. No, none of them have been there long enough to know whether they're doing a good or bad job.
Okay. Hogan, which cabinet member is doing the best job so far?
I'd have to say in two different ways. I think Rubio and Noem.
Rubio and Noem. Okay. Last question. Will the House pass the reconciliation package tomorrow or this week? Steve.
This week.
They'll pass it this week?
I think they will.
Hogan?
As early as tomorrow, but yes, this week.
This week. All right, let's go to your questions for these two outstanding gentlemen. Come on in, tell folks where you are in case they don't know, what's on your mind. And of course, we start with Brian. Brian, welcome in.
Hi, thanks. I'm from the great state of Land of Lincoln, where we lead the leagues in governors being put in jail.
Yeah, although it's been a while.
Not your current governor.
Yeah.
It's been a while.
Not yet. Mike, I got a couple points. One is I work with the DOD, the DOE, NASA as a contractor. I'm in the nuclear energy business. I remember in the 80s when I took over that account and we went to the Pentagon the first time, the sales guy said, listen, Brian, don't say anything. Just listen, because DC works at a different pace. Okay, so working with these other people in DC, working with the people in the government, it's just a slower pace. And finally, it's catching up to them where it's, hey, I will tell you, in 1980, it was 1-to-1. For every 1 day we took, the G-men took 2 days. In 95, for every 1 day we took, it took them 3 days. And lately, after COVID, my friend said you were lucky to get a hold of anybody because they were all at home and they didn't have any phone numbers.
Yeah.
So the government's very, the public is concerned about that. And the second thing is, I work at a food pantry where people just come get free food. And I get a lot of people that say to me, hey, listen, Brian, thank God you guys are doing this. We can't afford to pay our bills. It was either rent or food. And what I'm seeing is a lot of people are saying, I voted for Kamala, but I like what I see what's going on. the notion of people being held accountable on a 5-point email, America's done that for a long, long time. They can't believe that the government people are complaining about that. So they like that. They think it's a plus. And I've had people said, hey, had I known that Trump would have done this, I would have probably voted for him because I like things being shaken up.
All right,
so
Brian,
my question,
yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
So my only question is, I'm an independent. I voted for Clinton. I voted for once, Obama once. And I don't see everything Trump does, but he gets things done. Whether they're right or wrong, he gets things done. For me to go back to thinking about the Democratic Party, there's some things I'd like to either get straightened out or explain. I won't even go into the big guy getting money from China. I'm going to give you a pass on that. But the fact that everybody knew in Washington that Biden had dementia and wasn't his best at 100% is a shame. I'm in Chicago here. Guess what? I don't have to play for the Cubs to know that Sammy Sosa, he was on steroids when he was hitting those home runs. Okay. I mean, so for me, I am surprised that American people are not requesting more of that. Where's the investigation about that?
All right, Brian, hold on. That's okay. Steve, do you have any questions for Brian?
I obviously don't agree. And I think you can always look at the government, just as you can look at a lot of big corporations, a lot of bureaucracies in the world, a lot of nonprofits, and find anecdotal examples that you don't like, or that they're disorganized, or they don't get things done as fast as you want. But I think when you look at the totality of many of the things that people like in this world, the government does a pretty good job at. And if you took them away, they would be very unhappy. You took away what we do at DOD, if you took away what we do at the Agriculture Department, at the FAA, the security we get from the Department of Homeland Security, I think people would be unhappy. So, it's not perfect, no. And as I said, when Democrats, we reinvented government before, and what I object to about Donald Trump is I don't think the Elon Musk project is thoughtful in any way about, it's just like take a chainsaw and get rid of everything rather than figure out what works and what doesn't work. And people who perform get rewarded, and people who don't perform don't get rewarded. And there's no reason we can't do that.
Speaking
about
I'll give you an example on the DOD. So we clean up Hanford, right? That's where they built the plutonium. And they're always constantly cleaning that out there in Washington State. We had a job that had to get done in 60 days. We needed, let's just say, 80 boxes built in 60 days. And they were going to do that on site. It got moved up 30 days. So now we need 80 boxes in 30 days. They can only do 40. We're going to make the other 40 as a contractor. So it was going to take them a month to make 40 boxes. It was going to take my guys 9 days with 8 guys. They had 10 guys. When I gave that price to the DOD, the guy looked at it and said, I can't do that. If I turn this in, I'm going to look bad and lose my job. Not only that, the union is going to be expected to do this every time. So my company is a big company. It's a Fortune 500, so we do a lot of things in a lot of different groups. We turned that job down. And guess what? They found a contractor that was going to milk them for the 40 boxes and give them that price. So don't tell me there's waste. I'm sorry.
There is not enough waste to do what Donald Trump says or Elon Musk says. I'm not arguing that there's not waste. Sure, there's waste, and sure there's waste in the corporate world. There's waste everywhere, and we need to root it out, and we need to do it more efficiently.
Okay, but you don't know there's not enough ways to do that. Number one. Number two,
yes,
Brian.
I do.
First of all, Brian, are you telling me someone outside the government, an outside contractor, had a better idea more efficiently to utilize money in a better way than the inside the government? Are you crazy? The government is the best tool we have in our lives to get things accomplished.
Hogan.
Very clear here.
Hogan. Settle down the sarcasm.
He's absolutely correct. No one is saying we're going to get rid of the core functions of the DOD. That's not what we're saying. Of course, they're designed to protect us. No one is saying we're going to get rid of and gut the FAA and prevent them from letting us fly around safely. In fact, the Delta CEO was on one of the networks talking on a morning show, and they said, "Is this because of Donald Trump's cuts you guys had this plane crash?" And he was like, "No, it's not." These are clearly issues the American people know are problems within the federal government. And the more we have the conversation, the more we expose it, the more people really get to see what's happening. Yes, we've always seen the video of the little shrimp on the treadmill, and you go, wow, what a big wasteful project. Ron Paul, rather, was talking about this decades ago. Tom Cole, decades ago. But now you're seeing someone who has the bully pulpit like Donald Trump, but also the place to amplify it, like Trump and Musk together. And you're starting to expose and peel back the layers with these hundreds of billions of dollars of misused and misspent money. It's a real problem. And if they do a good job explaining that and showing how cutting it or getting rid of it and making the department more efficient and actually making it accomplish its stated goals and duties, we're just going to be way better off. And I think the American people are going to love it.
They still need to explain it better. Brian, I got one more question for you. Then we got to move on to somebody else. Name some benefit you get from the federal government that you'd be willing to give up.
What I get? Well, I'd be give up. It would depend what I would get in return. All right, I'd be willing to cut back even on Social Security if we could have an end to the means and the budget would be squared away. Right now, nobody's got any plans. Nobody.
Yeah,
right? And that's why I like Trump. He's a crazy businessman. You know, I don't care if he sells out the Gaza Strip, you know, and sells, you know, stickers on the military guys like NASCAR. You know, everybody's up for sale anyways. Why don't we do it like golf? Why don't we have the senators wear hats? They'll say Pfizer for whoever's getting something, and then you can have the guy who's getting the NRA and Lockheed Martin. They're all paying for it anyways.
I love it.
Thank you, Brian.
Get some money. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. Come back regularly. All right.
Great. It's so good.
That idea. Calvin, welcome in. Tell folks who don't know where you are, what's on your mind, sir.
Hey, Mark, I'm in Sumter, South Carolina, in the sultry state here. Oh, there we go, Hogan. I have a question for, I guess, all three of you. And I'm an executive committee man for our local GOP in this county, right? And we are seeing quite a shift in South Carolina. And I know at the coast, it's been very poignant that it's going to create a lot of political problems, I think, here for our state GOP. And let's put it this way: we've had a lot of Yankees move into our state in the last about 10 years. And
so true.
And our local party is essentially all our precincts. The Yankee MAGA, right, that has moved in has essentially, I don't want to say hijack's the right word, but they have gotten their people elected, and they are holding our party basically to almost an extreme MAGA right that is, I think, probably not palpable for South Carolina. And the Speaker of the House of South Carolina, his office is right across the street from mine in Sumter, and he doesn't even really come to our meetings, right? Because he'll get shouted at, and there's like they want these constant loyalty tests. I hear the same and has problems in Beaufort and in Hilton Head and in Myrtle Beach and Charleston, where we have this extreme right MAGA that's pulling the party all this way. And I think we're pretty MAGA, the current political party, but the current Republicans, but they are pulling us so right.
Calvin, is it on issues or is it just stylistic?
It's on issues.
What kind of what issues?
So big ones in South Carolina that are coming right now are school choice, which is very hot topic here. Vouchers for private schools. There's also a big thing coming up about the income tax. Right now, the governor's gotten on board with that, but eliminating state income tax. And then the other part is that our politicians are not vocal enough in support of Donald Trump, or they, like, especially Lindsey Graham, who, will always be that, and he's up for re-election in 26. And there's been some rumbles of primarying for some of our local congressmen, but I think it's becoming the northern influence here is a lot more MAGA, and it's not as actually comes from, traditionally South Carolina is evangelical, kind of Christian base, party. But this new crowd that's come in has none of those scruples at all.
All right. So, Calvin, what's the question? Great information. What's the question?
Yeah, my question is this something that you see, and I guess maybe Hogan, you can speak to this, and maybe even Steve, is this something that's happening across the South, Georgia, North Carolina? Is this kind of a problem that I could, I put this way, like candidates are being, in the primaries, where sometimes like we've had some stinkers run that could never win. And our county's a swing county.
Yeah.
Hogan, what about this MAGA Yankee invasion?
Well, I obviously being the ED of the South Carolina Republican Party back in 2008, I have kind of a vested interest in the state, living there 25 plus years, but also watching the movement kind of grow in South Carolina. Obviously, an extremely red state. But this is happening all over the South. My friends in North Carolina, where people are leaving the blue states and going to North Carolina as well. I was actually born there. Georgia, the same thing. And so that's why you're seeing the elections kind of close from being super red to kind of more purplish, because of that influx of people from the North who are fleeing bad policy and then come into these southern states and then try and take over local parties. As they want to get involved, they care, but then they're kind of implementing a lot of the northern policy, which is problematic for people down there. So it's a trend that's most assuredly happening across the Southeast. But little tidbit, I did get called twice in the last week to run against Lindsey Graham, and I said no both times, just so we're clear. I would never do that. No, I would never do that.
Steve, are you from South Jersey or North Jersey?
I am from North Jersey. I have a brother who lives in South Carolina and a nephew who lives in South Carolina, and they are not part of the MAGA movement. They are liberal Democrats, so they're feeling a little beleaguered down there.
Yeah. I bet. Steve, how do you analyze the prospect that fissures within MAGA, particularly in the House, could be a political problem for the president?
Well, as we were sitting here, Mark, I looked at my phone and there was a breaking news thing from Politico about how they're revisiting the $880 billion in Medicaid cuts because they're having trouble getting the votes. Because there are a bunch of Republicans who are from states that benefit a lot from Medicaid. There are some red states that benefit a lot from Medicaid, not to mention the blue state Republicans who benefit from Medicaid. And they're starting to rethink, should I vote for these large cuts in healthcare, which people like? So I think there are going to be fissures in the party. This is, they're trying to do some things that just are not substantively correct, that are politically incorrect. And they're going to have a hard time, and people are going to wake up and say, you can't fix. There is not enough waste, fraud, and abuse to cut $880 billion from Medicaid. I'm sorry. There just is not.
Steve, you must subscribe to Politico Pro and got a pro alert.
I did get a pro alert, Mark.
Yeah,
you can't afford pro.
I can't afford pro.
All of our
Calvin,
taxpayer dollars
joining,
at work,
Calvin.
everybody.
Thanks for joining. All right, guys, I want to talk about
Hogan, I don't work for the government. It's not your taxpayer dollars at work.
Yeah.
It's my hard-earned personal money.
We're giving it to Politico Pro. Of course,
Elon
cut it all off.
Can you set your alerts so I get them too? Can you do like a 2-for-1? I need the pro
like
alerts.
Forwarding your newsletter, Mark, which I'm not allowed to do. Remember,
you are not allowed to forward my newsletter. All right, I want to play you a little bit of Macron talking to Brett Baer earlier this evening, just a few minutes ago, about tariffs, because I want to check in with you both on where you think the tariff debate is. So please roll, Monsieur Macron.
And I hope I did convince him on trade and tariffs.
Which was what? He wants to do reciprocal.
No, I told him, it's very important for you not to launch new tariffs. VAT is not a tariff. And I argued, which is true.
But this thing is reciprocal. If you tariff us, we're going to tariff you.
I agree, but we don't tariff you. So we don't move. So but my point, and it's very important first, we are super intertwined. Our economy are totally intertwined. $1,500 billion of exchange, products and goods and digital services. Can you imagine? There is no other economies like Europe and the US. Second, we didn't tariff the US. We want to cut red tape for us as Europeans, and it will simplify the life of your companies, fine. But I think the solution in this very moment is not to increase tariffs. Why? Because the emergency is to increase our defense and security expenditures. How do you want us to increase security and defense expenditures if we are a trade war?
Do you think you made a breakthrough today?
And second, what is your priority? I understood your priority is to put tariff on China because President Trump said they are unfair with us. Come on, you cannot have a trade war with China and Europe at the same time. I hope I convinced.
First of all, I love the way he says intertwined, intertwined. So Steve, he seemed to me to make two kind of like shaggy dog arguments. One is, hey, you want us to talk about defense, don't make us talk about tariffs. And the other is, you want to have a trade war with China, do that, don't have a trade war with Europe. Do you support, used to work for Mr. Gephardt, who was a big trade hawk, do you support any aspect of the president's tariff scheme?
I don't support, blanket 25% tariffs on Mexico and Canada when we have a free trade agreement with them, which, as you know, I worked for someone who was not a free trader, and we opposed NAFTA at the time. But the Congress, with virtually unanimous Republican votes, passed it. And Republicans and Democrats together got it done. And I respect the will of the people. And if that's what they wanted, that's what we should do. There are certainly places where we should have tariffs and we should have a discussion about tariffs. We should be cognizant, though, that when you do tariffs, there's a downside risk. And the downside risk is you're going to raise prices. And to me, that's counterintuitive to the I'm going to solve the price problem on day one. Here we are on day 34.
Hogan, how do you feel about the president's tariff taunts?
I mean, look, he did that in the first term, as we well know. He's also used them quite effectively to get what he wanted from other nations, whether it be Mexico to step up, provide some military services to prevent drugs pouring into our country, other things. These economic policies are always interesting to me because, as Trump likes to say, these are just reciprocal. You tariff us, we're going to tariff you. What's the problem with that? I think most Americans get it. I do think it's incumbent upon the administration to explain why. If there's a national security component, let's have that conversation. It should be noted we had tariffs in the Trump administration first time. Joe Biden kept those tariffs in place. He did not get rid of them. Now Trump comes back in, as we know, and he ran on this. He wants to tariff nations that he feels are taking advantage of us and have been for some time. And there are plenty of nations who treat us poorly economically, no question. So again, economic policy has an immediate kind of shift and you feel some of the stuff immediately, but then there's a long-term drip effect to it as well. And so it remains to be seen what ones actually get put in place. Otherwise, we're just talking in theory here, and what it actually does to the American people in their pocketbook. That's what's going to matter. If it's good for them, they won't care. If it's bad for them, they will.
I appreciate you both always sharing your thoughts. I'm really interested in both of you. I'd love for you to find one current matter of public policy that you agree on. Can you two figure out something you agree on? Because so far tonight, you've just disagreed.
I'll throw one to see if he agrees with this.
Yeah.
Expelling violent, illegal alien criminals from our country.
Sure. I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Steve, you find one. Find something your party's taking the lead on that you think Hogan would agree with.
That Hogan would agree with? That's probably hard. I don't know.
I don't know. He found one for you. How about I don't know.
Yeah, so we just
Hogan, how about banning assault weapons, Hogan?
Well, you have to tell me what an assault weapon is first. Define the terms first.
I defer to the ATF, whatever they say.
I don't think they have a characterization, but nonetheless.
Well, how about banning bazookas?
Well, I don't think you can have a bazooka, can you?
I don't know. Court hasn't ruled on it recently.
Yeah.
Court hasn't ruled on it recently.
All right, Jack, come on in. Tell folks who don't know where you are what's on your mind, please.
I'm in San Antonio.
There you
Beautiful place.
Oh, wonderful. And particularly, I found it interesting that just the recent comments on the guns. One of the more amusing things I saw just a couple of years ago, an ad in a newspaper for a 50 caliber machine gun suitable for mounting on the back of your boat or pickup truck.
Sure.
Now, that's something I think is a little bit over the top when you talk about gun control.
Yeah.
But one of my big concerns, though, about is Doge. I think the concept is wonderful, but taking a sledgehammer the way they are, I think, is very counterproductive. For example, you talk about the probationary workers. We're very close here to just killing off a generation that's going to be sustaining these programs in the future. They need to be a little bit more surgical, because there are certainly many, many people throughout all of the agencies. I spent 40 years working in Department of Defense, military, as a contractor and as a civil servant. And I certainly saw a lot of fraud, but we had some wonderful people that worked their tails off. And it's very important to be a little careful with whom you're dropping out the end, because we could really be shooting ourselves in the foot. For example, FAA is an obvious one where you'll pay a penalty very quickly if you're getting rid of too many of these young air traffic controllers.
Yeah. Jack, what about the argument that if they don't go quickly, if they don't move broadly, that they're not going to bring a fundamental change?
I disagree with that. I think that's a lot of performance art. But the fact is, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater on so many of these things. We need to move aggressively on the fraud. For example, USAID, transgender plays and comic books. That's an easy one. That is outrageous that it should be there. But there's nothing really wrong with having Sesame Street in Iran. I would certainly rather have them listening to Sesame Street than some madrasa. There is some merit to something like that. Of course, that to me goes back to our days with the Europeans, with Voice of America.
Yeah,
some of these things are good.
Well, let me ask you one more question, and then maybe get some closing comments from Hogan and Steve. Jack, if the president and Elon Musk called you and said, be specific, what should we do differently? What would you specifically tell them?
For example, I worked in fraud, waste, and abuse. We had situations where we had dermatologists in California, in the Los Angeles area. The average dermatologist bill, let's say, $100,000 a month. But then we had some that went for years billing $600,000 a month. Any reasonable person should be able to look at that and say, let's target that person that's billing there, because that is way over the average. And that to me is low-hanging fruit. And particularly with all of these technical geniuses that should be able to have computer solutions that can monitor this type of thing in real time.
Seems to me, Hogan and Steve, you both might agree with Jack.
I think Jack is totally right. I think we ought to look at the individuals and the individual programs, not just take a chainsaw to it. We ought to make real decisions.
Hogan, you agree with that, I hope.
Well, I mean, they are looking at it. That's the problem. It's just the interesting, something we like to say in the South, Mark, if you throw a rock over the fence, it's the hit dog that yelps. Of all the things Trump has done to this point, there's only one collective yelp happening, and it was when exposing USAID became an issue. Democrats rallied around that in a big way because they were their little pet project.
True.
Yeah,
it's not true.
Hogan,
Democrats are rallying around multiple issues. Let's talk about Medicaid.
Early on, we were talking about USAID was the first thing that kind of brought us to
the first thing you did. That was the first thing you did.
Exactly. And now,
that was the first thing that Trump did.
And now the yelping, in addition to USAID, is occurring anytime you're pulling back any of those pet projects. And while you're talking about Sesame Street in a Middle Eastern country, sure, they should have it. But why should we pay for that? That makes no sense at all, I think, to a lot of people out there. When you have veterans on the street, you have homeless people all over the street, and we're not helping our own people here. That's a real problem.
Bush's program to get people in foreign countries HIV. Should we pay
to get them HIV?
Get them drugs.
Drugs to treat HIV.
Again, that depends. That's up to the policies of this administration to decide.
Well, but it's been the policy.
It was a George Bush program.
Been the policy.
I'm aware.
Should we still have it? Should we still have it?
Do we still have that program?
I'd most assuredly have to look at the numbers to see if we're getting return on that investment. If numbers of HIV are going up, then what are we doing?
Should we be treating Ebola in Africa so it doesn't come to our country?
Again, depending on the receipts, this is the big problem. You guys just want to do it because it sounds good. I'm saying, does it actually work? What are the receipts?
You just want to get rid of it.
I don't. But I don't. If you want to spend the money if you want to spend the money, that's fine. But I'm going to need to see receipts on what it's spent for. You wouldn't let your kid go to college and say, here's a blank check. You'd want to know what they're spending the money on.
We have decades.
That works plenty of ways across the world.
Well,
plenty of ways.
On PEPFAR, for example, we have decades of results of how it has stayed.
We do, Steve, but there's no reason not to look at it and see if we're getting the return on the investment.
Sure, but don't just get rid of it.
I agree with both of you. Thank you, Steve and Hogan. Thank you, Jack. Thanks to everybody who asked questions. Very grateful to everybody for being part of it. Love having you guys on. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern Time, Dan and Sean and I will be back for the morning meeting. And 23 hours from now on this very platform, New York Congressman Richie Torres will be here. He endorsed a candidate for mayor of New York City who's not even in the race yet. But Richie Torres will be back on two-way. We'll talk to him about why he's endorsing a candidate who's not even in the race and more. And of course, he'll be taking your questions. If you've never asked Richie Torres a question, Bill Outlaw, come back. You'll get a chance to do it. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Thanks again to Steve and Hogan. We'll see you at 9 a.m. for the morning meeting.